Barakatah Yahweh Shai. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh Shai.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praise, glory, and honor be to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachaha Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, better known as GMS, who rule well and teach well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect, the tabernacle of David, beginning with the 144,000 and the rest of the men, women, and children out of the 12 tribes whom Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai will ultimately have mercy upon in these last days. I'm your brother M.O.T.B, residing from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Melbourne, Australia. All right. And the water Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai for giving me the inspiration to be able to do this lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai to raise up the elect, the hopeful elect, all right, so that they turn back and understand the truth in these last days, all right. And, the scriptures tells us to seek ye Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai while he may be found, all right, because we're entering into a time now where the gig is pretty much just about up for these Edomites and also 2/3 of our people who have been not taking it seriously, mocking the prophets, okay, laughing and thinking overall that this is a game, okay. And really, if you understood the fear of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, you will be very hip to the song that's going out and being sung. All right. As the scripture says in Matthew, the 11th chapter, we have piped all day long, but ye have not danced, roughly paraphrasing. All right. And the song has been going out. All right. Since the time of Abba Bivens. All right. All the way up until the School of One West. OK. Down to the apostles of Great Millstone. OK. And the rest of the bishops and the elders on down. And so basically, what I want to get into within this lesson to tie all of this in so that you can understand that we are not to be ignorant of Satan's devices. See, really the situation that's going on over there in Iran, this whole war between Israel and the U.S. is what you will call controlled pressure situation. All right. Now, for the masses of the people who are looking at it from a different angle because they don't have the scoop. OK, they don't have the complete understanding. As the scriptures tells us, we should have that eye salve to be able to be complete and to see all things. OK, because the scriptures also tells us that we have an unction from the Holy One and we know all things. And that's pursuant to biblical prophecy. Right. But just for the masses of the people that on the outside looking in, they don't understand that really the situation going against Iran, Babylon the Great, America, and Israel. All of this is controlled pressure to bring in what they deem as digital control grid. And I'm going to show you in just a minute or two. But before I do that, this is Professor Mirandai. And he's just going to tell you what's at stake here. All right. So let's listen in.
We're going to see the complete destruction of all oil and gas installations and electricity and water desalination plants in the Persian Gulf region. And that will be the end of oil and gas from this region permanently. Basically, that's what Trump is pushing for. And I think we're on the verge of a global economic depression that will be far more devastating than 1929. The Iranians are not going to back down under any circumstances. There's not a chance because the Iranians are saying a ceasefire is just an opportunity for Trump and Netanyahu and the Zionist lobby to rearm and to regroup and then to attack and slaughter Iranians again. The only way forward is to make sure that there has to be compensation. But anything other than that is just an invitation for another war, which we saw already. That we had a war 9 months ago. Netanyahu begged for a ceasefire. Trump pushed for a ceasefire. And then here we are again. For all these kings and princes and royal families, they have palaces in the United States. They have palaces across Europe. They have billions of dollars, tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars of assets in the West. If their regimes collapse, they're gone. When that happens, then the Strait of Hormuz is useless. If it's, let's say there's an agreement and it's open. If there are no
Right. And Salakia, I had to stop it there just to interject because everything he said is true, right? But what you got to understand is in a situation like this, dealing with a full scale war with Iran, right? If they were to go toe to toe, right, like I'm talking about going all out, it would be extremely costly globally because you see what's going on with the oil. All right. You see what's now going on with the trading routes, shipping routes. So major powers, they tend to avoid direct escalation unless something major triggers it. OK. And the only way that can trigger it is which is, remain to be seen this evening, dealing with, Nero 47 giving Iran one last ultimatum to open up the Strait of Hormuz, or the people will be unalive tonight, as he so eloquently put it. All right. And of course, I'm joking when I say that, but nevertheless, all right. So right now, this is why I said it's more of a controlled pressure situation, not really an all-out war. And you're going to see what I mean in just a second, right? Because what you have to take into account is the fact that there's a pattern going here, right? And he mentioned that 1 minute they'll declare war, then they'll try to bring in peace talks, a ceasefire or whatever, right? But what they're trying to accomplish is the fact that if it doesn't pan out the way that they want it to pan out, for an example, going back to January, Babylon and Great America, they didn't want to go into a situation the way that everything has turned around right now and backfired on them. That's the reason why Trump at first would say, okay, I'm going to give them a 2 days notice, or okay, I'm going to extend it to 10 days. Okay. Essentially, what they had in their mind back in January was, okay, we're going to go in, we're going to shorten your dollar, right? And then we're going to try to overthrow your regime so that we can gain political control. And that way we can have control of your I think it was uranium. And also they wanted to establish a central reserve banking system, which is really what this is truly all about. Because if they can get control of that part of the region, now they can start to roll out the access dealing with the digital control grid. All right. That's really what it was about. That's why the first thing they did when they went into Iran, Salakia, back in January, they tried to shorten the dollar, and then they caused rioting in the streets to try to overthrow the regime. You see what I'm saying? But they did not anticipate that Iran was strong enough to retaliate back, especially after they unalived the Ayatollah. All right. So a war like this, or a global instability, such as with Iran that we see on a global scale happening right now, this could be used to justify tighter digital control systems. Ultimately, that is the real reason why they are over there in Iran. And a lot of people, they don't understand this to the the full scale that it has reached. Now, there is a historical pattern that we must understand, and it's also worth noting, right? And that is, when you talk about crisis, right, what do governments do? They tend to expand their authority, all right? And an example of that, we saw that take place post 9/11. They introduced surveillance laws, the Patriot Act, right, leading all the way up until 2020, dealing with the COVID. Okay, you saw the tracking system, the facial recognition cameras go up in stores, street cameras and stuff like that, right? So ultimately, the pattern exists, right? However, different countries, they're rolling it out at their own convenience and what's suitable for them in a timely manner. However, Esau is running out of time pursuant to the scriptures. All right. What's that? Revelation 12:12. The devil shall come down upon you with great wrath, because why? He knoweth that he had but a short time. Right now, we are, just almost halfway through the year in 2026. They have 4 years left to complete their Project 2030, which ultimately is essentially to have everybody digitized within their CBDC system. Okay. Everybody needs to be tracked and traced, and they're going to do that via way of the microchip pursuant to Revelation, the 13th chapter. All right. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Let's continue. I'm going to take this back a little bit.
And then here we are again. For all these kings and princes and royal families, they have palaces in the United States. They have palaces across Europe. They have billions of dollars, tens if not hundreds of billions of dollars of assets in the West. If their regimes collapse, they're gone. When that happens, then the Strait of Hormuz is useless. If it's, let's say there's an agreement and it's open. If there are no tankers, if there is no oil production, if there's no LNG production, then what's the use? So we're going to have a permanent removal of the energy, as well as the fertilizers, as well as the petrochemicals, as well as the market. Because these regimes, when they sell their oil, they send their money to the United States. They buy stocks, they buy bonds, they buy U.S. weapons. That market will disappear. Well, the Russians are benefiting enormously because the price of oil is going through the roof, and they're huge exporters. And in the United States, those producers of oil are going to make a killing too. It's the consumers whose lives are going to be destroyed and their businesses crushed. And as I said, the money that comes from the Persian Gulf will no longer be going there. The Chinese actually have the biggest reserves in the world right now. They've purchased a lot of oil, and of course they have the Russians. Ever since the Europeans cut off their oil and gas relations with Russia, they've been sending it to China. So China will be hurt a lot less than anyone else. But how can the Chinese or the Russians or others make a difference when Trump is behaving like a madman?
Yep. And ultimately, that's what's going to lead to Babylon the Great's demise, because as the scripture says, the Russians, they're going to be the ones to really kick off shooting those missiles. All right. This is why the scriptures tells us, let's get that in Revelation 20:7, 20:8, Salakia. Revelation 20:8, and says, and he shall go out to deceive the nations. That's talking about the Edomites, okay, which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, right? And that's talking about Russia, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. All right. And you can link this back up with Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. Okay. And also Isaiah, the 13th chapter, because even in Isaiah 13 and 17 on down. All right. Notice the title says Babylon will fall to the Medes. Now, in this case, when it says Babylon will fall to the Medes, this is not speaking about ancient Babylon and how they fell to the Medo-Persian Empire, right? But essentially, through the spirit, the same region of conflict is playing out, because America, even though it's on the western side of the hemisphere, it is spiritually known as the daughter of Babylon. Okay, it is spiritually known as Nineveh. It is spiritually known as Assyria. All right, and so where Russia is situated today, when you look up especially the ancient map of the names, okay, the Medes, all right, the Medes were pretty much stationed where Russia is today. All right. So it says, Isaiah 13 and 17, behold, I will stir up the Medes, and this is, going into the Russians, against them, Babylon the Great, that is, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it, because it's going to get so, out of control with what's going on, and the escalation is going to lead to this very moment where Babylon the Great, they're not going to be able to do anything to change Russia's mind for what Russia is going to do to them. And not just Russia alone, but when you read Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, all of those nations that Russia is a guard to, including the Persians, which are the modern day Iranians, okay, they're going to really let loose pursuant to second Esdras, the 15th chapter, when it goes into the Carmanians. You understand? So it says their bows also shall dash the young man to pieces, and They shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare their children. So they're not going to give two shits. And this is speaking about the Russians again. When they shoot off those ICBM missiles all the way to America, they're not going to be sitting where those systems are, all right, where the buttons are to fire the nuclear weapons. They're not going to think, oh, but what about the all of the pregnant women that are over there? What about the young children, the babies? Okay, what about their men? No, they not going to give two shits about any of that. They just going to hit the buttons, man. Yahweh Bashem El Shah is going to put it in their spirit to just detonate, right, on sight. And that's why it tells you in the very next verse, verse 19, and Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldeans' excellency shall be as when Yahweh Bashem El Shah overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. So it's letting you know that back in the ancient time, when Sodom and Gomorrah, okay, when it was raining fire, hellfire and brimstone down, right? That is going to be much worse in a sense for America. But they going to get the same plague as what Sodom and Gomorrah got. You see? Verse 20, it shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation, neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there, all right? Because just how you see all of the Ishmaelites in Elam, how they come over and set up shop, they own all the 7-Eleven stores and stuff like that. It ain't going to be like that. They're not going to come over and pitch tent and set up and make money on Jake like they currently doing now. That's not going to happen. All right, this place finna be utterly laid to desolate. All right. So let's build off of that. We don't need that no more. All right, now this is a video on Odyssey, which was posted today. And it's from Catherine Austin Fitz as she connects Iran and the control grid. Because remember, as I told you earlier on and at the start of the lesson, that really this is about setting up the digital system. Okay, and Iran is mainly in the way of that because it causes leakages within the system. Okay, and this is what the masses of the people, they don't know what's really going on behind closed doors. But let's take a listen in, all right, and then we'll build off of this.
There are two sides of the balance sheet here that are driving this. One,
Salakia, take it back a little bit.
there are two sides of the balance sheet here that are driving this. One, of course, is oil and energy, but the other is the financial control grid, because Iran right now is the largest leakage in the system. If you're going to do a global programmable money globally, Iran and what Iran is doing with China and some of the other countries puts too much leakage in the system. So I think what is unfortunate here is there is likely to be an effort to put boots on the ground, and we are likely to get bogged down in there for a long, long time.
So, do you think that is the right thing to do for America, to have boots on the ground or even be involved in attacking Iran? I mean, we were the first aggressor here. We fired the first shots in Iran. Is that the right thing to do for our country?
That is the right thing to do if you want to implement the digital control grid. It's not the right thing to do if you want to represent America. But this has nothing to do with American national interests. This has to do with essentially a syndicate asserting sufficient control to implement the next phase of the financial system.
So you think they got to Trump and convinced Trump, or wasn't it really Israel saying, "Hey, we're going to invade Iran, and we'd like some, why don't you do it with us because there's an opportunity?" And Trump saw that as opportunistic rather than this being something that is strategic.
So the way I think of this is the White House operates within a lane that is set for them by the nature of the machinery they're running. So think of it this way: the U.S. government spends $6 to $7 trillion a year, and it gets $4 trillion of revenues. and the other 2 to 3 trillion comes in from borrowing in the bond market, essentially through the central bankers. And so it has to, and if you say to the Americans, we're going to tell the bankers to go jump in the lake, the Americans say, no, 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 we want our check. And so you're between a rock and a hard place because everybody in America wants their check. And you've got to do what you've got to operate within those lanes to make the bankers happy. And if you look at the whole US dollar reserve currency system, you've got to do whatever you've got to do to make the system go. And right now, and the chairman of the Federal Reserve just said this, we're the debt is growing at a faster rate than our fundamental growth rate. And if you look at one of the big push by Kennedy and HHS to change the food and health issues in America, part of that is to get that growth rate back up. You can't get a growth rate from poisoning your people. Ultimately, that doesn't work for economic growth. So all of these issues are integrated in, but our debt is growing in an unsustainable pattern, and the question is, how do you deal with that? One way you deal with that is to implement a digital control grid in a way that uses digital tokens and stable coins to dramatically suck in more money globally into the machinery. And that's what they're trying to execute. So if you want the digital control grid, what is happening makes sense. Now,
And now, you see what she said? Because remember, now let's go back to the scriptures. Let's get to Habakkuk chapter 2. And the point is verse 6, really. It says, shall not all these take up a parable against him? That's talking about the Edomites. And a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his. How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. Right? Now, when you read this in the NLT, it says, but soon their captives will taunt them. They will mock them, saying, what sorrow awaits you, thieves, right? And that's what the Iranians are currently doing. All right. Because that madness that took place a week ago when Trump came out and said that they found the co-pilot that allegedly was missing. Well, it simply came out that that was a false flag to cover up the fact that they were trying to steal Iranians' uranium out of the country. You see? So it says, now you will get what you deserve. You've become rich by extortion, but how much longer can this go on? You see that? Because the debt ceiling in Babylon and Great America is currently rising each and every single day. Now that you've gone into a major crisis with Iran, led by the mini hats, okay, the Amalekites, all right, the least of the flock shall draw them out for war. Essentially what you have done, since gas prices have increased, diesel prices have increased, now there's they given us, as I've stated in previous lessons, a 6 to 8 month window on a global famine, because the farmers have not received the supplies that come off the crude oil, which helps them to fertilize their crops within the planting season. So every single person going to grocery stores, they literally have a 6 to 8 month window to stock up or whatever. OK, or maybe even shorter than that, because now they're talking about going into a energy lockdown, which is really what they want, because they need to crash the economy so that they can reboot the system and go digital. That's what it's all about. That's exactly what it's all about, man. OK, and the water Yahweh Bashim Shai. OK, by giving this understanding to the servants, the prophets, to be able to call these things out and see right down the middle. OK, and this is, again, the masses of the people, they don't see this. You see, but Jake and see, look, this just came up right now on my phone. Let's go into it. So as of today, Trump agrees to 2-week ceasefire, right? And so let me get these ads out the way. No, I don't want that. Let's just go into it. Salakia. This just came on the phone now. All right. And these damn ads, man. It says Trump agrees to 2-week ceasefire with Iran. Strait of Hormuz opens again. You see? Now, what did Morandai say in the video before that we watched earlier? He said this is their go-to plan. 1 minute they'll declare war. The next minute it's a ceasefire, right? Because that helps them to further, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, that buys them some time. Okay. And that's all they're doing. They're buying time. You see? They're just buying time, man. That's all it is. And now he's going to try to make it look like, see, the Iranians, we talked some sense into their head because they didn't want us to do what we said we was going to do. That's not what it's about. That is not what's going on here. Again, this is controlled pressure situation. A controlled pressure situation. That's all it is, if you can read between the lines. Right? So, let's get 2 Corinthians 2:11. It says, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices, meaning what? His plots going into his schemes. Okay? We see right through the bullshit, man. Because we know exactly what's coming down the pipeline, man. All right. And the Lord already said, let's get Job 14:5. It says, seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. So this is why this devil is trying to rush everything, but he's doing it such in a sloppy way that he's being caught with his pants left down. Okay. Yahweh Bashim Shah has lifted up the skirt. All right. And this horror is being exposed, man. Okay. So let's end it here, Revelation 13, because this is what it's ultimately all about in the end. Revelation 13:16, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. All right. Because as Catherine Austin Fitz said, Iran really is in the way of them globally setting up the digital grid. Why? Because when you understand, Iran is the only one that the elites, they have no control over when it comes to their central bank. That's the whole reason why back in January they tried to shorten the dollar and overthrow the regime. Just go look it up. And when you start to connect the dots, everything makes sense. Verse 17, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So you're not going to be able to move or operate within society, all right, unless you partake in it by being chipped. Okay, because the mark, that charagma, which is the Greek word, which means a incision, okay, graving image, which really goes into the microchip. It says, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and the number is 666. Chi psi stigma. Okay, which when you go into stigma, it's a prick. It means to be pricked in the skin, letting us know that it's a physical marking because they're going to insert something inside of you that acts as a badge of servitude. And what's going to happen if you take it? Revelation 14:9. And the third angel followed him, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in their forehead or his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of wrath of power, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. So in other words, don't take it because you're going to be destroyed. And some may say, well, what if they, threaten my life and unalive me? Well, you be ready to be unalive. Because if you go out like that, and if the Lord's with you, okay, you got first dibs, you're going to be risen back up anyway. You've already conquered death through Yahweh Shai, because he conquered death. And you have to wholeheartedly believe that. But if you don't believe that, all right, then this is game over for you, man. Like Elder Apostle Tahar always says, you're going to take that chip. So that's pretty much it. I'm gonna close out, and I want to give all praise, glory, and honor be to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rachahakwadash. Double honors once again to the beloved apostles and elders of Great Millstone, better known as GMS, who rule well and teach well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect, the tabernacle of David. And so on to the next, Abaratazah. Shalom.